Welcome to another great episode of the All Around. I am your gracious host, Dr. Anthony, and we have an amazing lineup for you guys today. We have a panelist of great educators from different perspectives in the education sector. And we're going to discuss a lot of topics, some courageous things that, most people don't know unless you're actually in education. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started and bring out my amazing educators. Hi. How are you?
Hey, everyone.
Hi. All right, make sure we're all in there. Hello. All right. So we have from educators from different perspectives of the educational spectrum. So we're going to discuss different topics, like I said, and just touch base upon things that, people want to know, but they comment on and they don't really know. And so we're going to try to enlighten you from a holistic point of view about education. So it's not about one specific school district. It's just about education in general. So I'll just go ahead and start off with the first topic of discussion. And we're going to talk about the pandemic. We're going to talk about pre-pandemic, pandemic, and post-pandemic. So I've been reading a lot of articles, and a lot of people are saying that the children's educational backgrounds are like really, really low because of the pandemic and things like that. And I want to touch base upon, like pre-pandemic, post, and, what we were going through during the pandemic. So you guys can, just jump in at any point. I don't want to be the central focus. I want to give you guys an opportunity to speak upon that particular topic. Who wants to go first?
Ladies first.
All right.
Okay. Great. So actually, we were talking about this today in the break room. And honestly, I have seen an improvement from when they first got back from the pandemic last year till now. But now it's just kind of putting them back on track, at least for our population of students that we teach. They know how to do it. They just need some more support and pulling out those resources to try to, kind of get back into the swing of things. And I know we don't have any more time to waste on the hand holding. I'll put those in air quotes to keep drawing them out. Like, we have to get to work. So that's what I have been noticing post-pandemic. Yeah, I won't hold it.
Mr. Feliciano.
He's on mute.
Hi. Well, in my case, comparing what I have observed in the classrooms now before the pandemic, there has been a dive in the production of the students. However, just like Ms. Beard says, I have noticed some improvement. It's not that the students lack the skills or the knowledge, it's that they lack the structure. When we went online, and I believe this happened, the students lost that structure of going to the school, having their teacher with them, face to face, that social aspect. And, in my case, I work with teenagers. Me as an adult, I struggle with online classes to pay attention and to focus through trying to focus on all of their classes and everything. It is a slow process, but I think we're getting there. It's taking longer than usual because there have been so many changes nationwide on how to deal with education post-pandemic. So
I'm going to be speaking from the counselor's perspective. I've definitely seen a decline in the moral ethical behavior of the students. And based on my observation pre-pandemic and post-pandemic, I mean, we know there were always variables that were impacting the social emotional component of students. But I think that the year and a half break of the basic fundamental concept of communication was just broken. So now these kids are coming back into the building pretty much academically behind, and then socially, emotionally distraught, totally lost, like they have no functions. And I'm not going to say all of them, but I think those are all the variables we're dealing with, and that now we see the behaviors in the classroom with the students just acting out because of the lack of common communication skills. They were low academically post-pandemic. Now they're coming back into the school. And, I break it down into three. I look at students now from the social emotional components. 25% get it, 25% got it, and 50% trying to figure it out on the social emotional level. Now, academically, I'm not in the classroom, so I can't speak, but that's what I see pre and post pandemic.
So let me play devil's advocate a little bit. But so can we say, pre-pandemic, we were still addressing some of these same issues prior to the pandemic? Because I mean, we saw, like low numbers from, test scores and students not being able to read, students not being able to, compute basic mathematics and things of that nature. So do you think the pandemic played an extra role in the children not learning? Because I know some students actually flourished online during the pandemic, especially, like children with disabilities. Those children actually performed a lot better in, the Zoom setting than they did in the physical, in the physical classroom. So for me, it's kind of hard to say that, the pandemic, was detrimental to a lot of students, because we saw this detriment prior to, the pandemic. I think the pandemic may have added a little bit more to it, but I think some of the students were already there, and the pandemic just shed a light on, things that we have already been bringing to the forefront to, the administrators, to the parents, and, the other constituents that play a role in, how we function inside of the classroom, how we do our jobs, and, play a role in what we teach, and, basically telling us how to teach. So I still think that, we had a lot of children who were extremely low prior to the pandemic, but we have an enormous amount now post-pandemic who are worse than, they were, when they were actually in school during the pandemic. So what do you think?
I will definitely say, I guess I'm going to say the taboo word. If education was important to your household pre-pandemic, you didn't struggle as much. Now, mind you, I read an article just this morning that talked about students didn't have a hard time with reading. Parents felt more comfortable helping their students out with reading than they did with mathematics. And of course, that's not my subject area that I teach. However, I think if education is paramount at your house, then people during the pandemic, they set an area aside, they had a routine, they filled in those gaps. And students who didn't have that structure, like Mr. Feliciano was saying, at home, they did struggle, because not only academically, but they also struggled with the structure that needed to be in place. And to talk to about Dr. Clay's conversation, I went to a social function after the pandemic, and it was the most awkward social function I've ever been to, where students are all dressed up, but they're just standing around. And I was like, wow, we've got a long way to recover, not just the academics, but the social aspect. And I think that was the hardest part on a lot of students, where you come to school, you get that relief, you get that structure, you see an adult that is being an adult per se, and, giving you standards and giving you ground rules, and, being confrontational with you, but in a positive way, to say that they want you to be better. They want to pull the best out of you. So for me, I didn't see so much, and I did teach special ed during the pandemic, or I know it's not called special ed anymore, I'm sorry, but I did teach that. And I saw that if the home life wasn't, get online can't be the directions for the students to be successful. It's, what are we learning today? Let's go over what we're doing. I think people learned a lot of lessons from that. The adults, the parents, us as teachers. It was difficult on that level, because I'm an in-person type of teacher. I wasn't good online, just because it just didn't feel like I was doing my job effectively. So,
and I think it just further separated the have from the have-nots.
Okay.
And what I mean by that, the students who have the support at home, like you said, Ms. Beard,
Mm-hmm.
students who have older sisters, older brothers who are going to sit there with them and make sure they log on. The students who are already disciplined, who have a disciplined mindset, it further separated them. So I think that's what it declined, because we know how it looked before, so you can imagine after.
Absolutely.
And return it back into the building. We see it every day.
Right.
But it's growth. I mean, I think just a matter of time before it gets, well, it's just a matter of time. We're going to see some improvement. It's just going to take a little while.
I think there was growth on both sides, but I think the pandemic highlighted, areas where we need to focus on even more, so with the kids, because even now the kids are still online. We're just sitting in front of them, inside of the classroom, because my class is totally online, and I teach, foundations of technology and engineering. And so everything that I do is totally online. And so, I'm still having some of the same concerns that I was having, during the pandemic when I was online at home. The students just don't pay attention. They're primarily on their cell phones. They're doing other stuff on the computers other than what I asked them to do. For example, I raised my voice in the class the week before we got out for Thanksgiving, and my students was like, "Oh my God, Dr. Anthony, you scared us," because I never raised my voice. I was like, I'm frustrated. I said, because you guys are not paying attention, and you're saying that, I'm not, delivering the message, but I am. But you're sitting there and you're not paying attention and you're not listening. And, for me, that is, the half of the hall is you have to listen and you have to pay attention in class, because the course that I teach is STEAM, and that's combined with, science, technology, engineering, arts, and the math. And so we were going over basic statistics, and I was like, I did this with first graders, and I proved it to them. And I showed them a video where somebody was talking about, my teaching skills with the first graders. And one of the kids replied, "Oh, the first graders must be smarter than us." And I'm just like, oh my God, no. I was like, they listened and they paid attention. You guys are not paying attention, and you automatically are, putting that wall up and saying, I can't do it, without even giving it a try. And so I'm just like, I'm still fighting that battle that I'm fighting from, the pandemic. So, the next thing is, how do we get out of that? How do we move forward? Because the children are still basically doing the same thing that they were doing during the pandemic. Mr. Feliciano?
I want to piggyback on what you said. So I had a little tech issue. But when one of the things that I believe helped some of the kids during the pandemic, it really depends on what kind of student they were. If the student is not really structured or doesn't really have that structured support at home, which is the case of a lot of the students that I have, a lot of those students did not perform really well. And it's just like you said, a lot of the time I find myself really frustrated, because I try to think of my students before the pandemic and the students I have today. And it's not that they don't get the topic, it's that they don't even try to pay attention. They don't even try to do the topic. So a lot of the times I am telling the kids, like, you're not giving me anything for me to work with. I don't need for you to do the work, perfectly. I don't need for you to master every single standard, but I need for you to do something so that I know what I need to work with. And a lot of the students, they're still in this pandemic mentality that no matter what is going to happen, they're going to move forward to the next class, that school is not a priority, because during the pandemic we were not a priority. During the pandemic, the priority, at least for the students that I have, which are high school students, their priority was staying at home to take care of their siblings, because mom and dad had to work. I had a lot of students when we were virtual that they had to go and get a job to support their families. And I think a part of me expected that, like we went back to school, things are going to go back to normal, and things are not getting back to normal, in their minds and in their situations and all of that. And I think Mr. Clay mentioned something earlier about the emotional being of the students. And I totally agree with him. I have seen students being less verbal, like they don't verbalize what they're feeling. When they have issues, they don't look for help. They just wait for things to explode, and then they don't know what to do with it. And I think that it's a big problem because our students are not. Something happened during the pandemic that they don't have that agency anymore to advocate for themselves, or at least say, okay, I need to at least try to do something at school.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Clay?
Yes. I'm just processing. Wow. So basically you're asking, is there hope and what's the solution? That's
for the most part, yes, because I mean, if we look at it, holistically from, just across the nation, we're seeing basically the same thing from, different school districts. I want to get into the mass exodus, but not right now. But, it's a lot of things that are not only affecting the children, but it's also affecting us as well. And so, the elephant in the room is, how do we address those issues? How do we, not get, teacher burnout? How do we, have the teachers, ready on fire and ready to go, when they step inside the building to, be able to produce and give those kids the lessons that they need, because we're human too. We get frustrated. Like I said, I got frustrated the other day because they were not, doing what I asked them to do. They were not paying attention. They were, asking the same questions over and over. And so as a human, I got frustrated. And like I said, I raised my voices, which is something that I never do with my students. And they noticed that. And I'm just like, I need you to perform. I need you to participate. I can't help you unless you help yourself. And so it just goes back to, how can we fix this? The administrators are not going to be able to fix it. The people that, are telling us what to do are not going to be able to fix it because they have no clue. They're not in the trenches. They're not down here. They're not, face to face. They're not dealing with the customer. We are. So we have to have those courageous conversations on, how do we fix it? And we have to start one classroom at a time, one school at a time, one building at a time. So how do we move forward, and how do we get, from a counseling standpoint with you, how do we get, the children to buy back into the education and see it as a necessity and see it as a benefit instead of a detriment?
I would say pre and post pandemic, have the mindset of help those you can help, and hope for those that you can hope for them to do better. Because even looking at it from a counselor standpoint, I'm dealing with the same thing the teachers are dealing with. You feel like you're not making progress, but then you realize that one student who makes a comment, or who something occurs and they really been paying attention to what you've been saying, but we so focused on the kids that we're not reaching, but we are reaching these particular students that we think we're not reaching. And that's where that hope comes in and that help. So I went post and pre-pandemic with the mindset of hope and help. Especially from a counselor standpoint, we always helping. But there's sometimes when you just feel like there's no hope, but there's really hope. And I give a prime example, a young man in my building, when I went to teach my introduction counseling lesson, he's a little busy young man. I'm in the middle school. He's real busy. Mm-hmm. So when I'm teaching this lesson I don't talk about counseling. I tell my life story. So in the midst of me telling my story, he's crying. I see a tear coming down his eyes. And his TA is sitting there with him, and she's never really seen that side of him. Mm-hmm. So later on that day, I saw him about 2 weeks later, and I asked him, I said, what's going on? Yada, yada, yada. He said, I'll follow up with you. I was like, okay. Anyway, so I'm in the cafeteria. He's sitting on the stage. So I went up to, I said, man, you told me to follow up with you. He said, what's up, man? I said, what was going on in the classroom? He said, man, your story really touched my life, and I'm gonna try to do better.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where that hope, because I've seen this young man around the building off the chain. Like, he just busy. But to see that, for him to say that, it gave me a sense of hope, and it helped me to realize that I'm helping him. And I'm sure as classroom teachers, you have the same stories. So those same students that we're talking about, we might not be reaching. We are reaching them, but we just got to keep planting those seeds. So I think that's the answer. We just got to keep fighting. We didn't get into this profession because we don't love what we do. So we just got to fight. And it's not easy. Hell, I feel like giving up a lot this year. But we still here.
Right. So I want to switch the subject a little bit. So I was invited to be a guest on somebody else's show. So just a little backstory.
Can I say what I need to say?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was a cockeyed optimist. I thought this pandemic, when we're coming back, they were going to change the structure of things. They were going to add some more elements. And how dare I think that they were going to fix education? I really thought, we were about to make it really worth the children's while. And a student said something to me the other day. He said, Ms. Beard, how many times am I going to learn about slavery? And I was like, uh-oh.
Wow.
So that made me put a question in their platform to find out, what can we do as educators to help you? And one boy honestly was like, you guys need to prepare us for our future. You're preparing us for your future. So help us. They want to be financially literate. They want to know about stocks and how to, work in this platform, the Facebooks, the Instagrams, the TikToks, making money. And we're not preparing them for their future. And I feel bad because my subject is about, just reading, and they can't take it. They're like, one boy said, I love everything you do, Ms. Beard, but I don't want to read a book. And I was like, oh, it was like a knife in my heart. How could you not? The old adage of, if you want to hide something from poor people, put it in a book. And I was just like, you don't understand what you're trying to do. And just like you said, Dr. Clay, I have shared my life story with the students. And I reached a girl because she felt the same thing as far as the pandemic and her lifestyle and her home life. And I'm like, but my message of hope is, you will get over it. You have to get over it. I got over it. And I can sit here and laugh and joke about it because it was horrific. But at the time, no, it was nothing to laugh about. But you're right. Telling that story does reach those unreachables. Okay, I'm done.
Okay. So I want to know, because we could talk about this all day long, but I want us to get to, some more topics, because I have a lot of people who watch and they are interested in, the different things that we do in terms of, like education. So I specifically wanted to talk about special education in IDEA and 504 and how children fall up under that umbrella. I was invited to another show. And so I was talking about children not being adequately prepared when they come to school. So the conversation started with pre-K. Some of the pre-K children who are enrolled in school are not potty trained. So the question began, whose responsibility is it to potty train the child? Is it the teacher's responsibility, or is it the parent responsibility? Because at the end of the day, we have to understand that the parents are the child's first teacher. The whole, first 4 or 5 years of your life, if they're not in preschool, they're spent with the parents. So the parents should have some form of responsibility when it comes to, the education of their child. So my comment was, I'm not wiping shit off nobody's ass. That was my comment. And I was like, I don't even want to wipe it off my own ass. So why would I wipe it off somebody else's ass? And so a viewer viewed in, and she was like, well, what about special education? What about special education? I have a special needs child. But we're not talking about special education. We're talking about pre-K students who are not adequately prepared to come to school. So we went over and we switched the subject to special education. So she was like, her child was in, public education, and the public teachers did not do what they were supposed to do in terms of her child and things like that, because he should have been in special ed. And I'm just like, wait a minute, hold up. I was like, anytime you make a request to us, we have to follow those laws, we have to follow those procedures, and we have to test your child to make sure that your child is adequately, prepared or, for, you know, special ed. So she continued to say, oh, well, you know, they said he was high functioning. Okay, right there. So your child is high functioning, so he did not qualify for special ed. So because she thought that her child qualified for special ed, the team and the teachers were not doing anything. So Dr. Clay, I want to start off with you, and I want you to basically go through the process of being in special ed from a counselor standpoint, and then we can jump in from a teacher standpoint.
Well, from the counselor's role in dealing with the special ed component is primarily our role is implementation of the 504 plan, which is with a student having a medical diagnosis, the school is responsible for putting things in place to help this child modify their academics. To help them with their academics. Prime example, if a child has asthma and they need 20 minutes to step outside the classroom, we develop a 504 plan to develop. One of the accommodations is a 15 or 20 minute break. That's the role the counselor plays. The counselor also, sometimes the counselor is placed on the IEP for counseling. That could be 15 minutes a month, 30 minutes a month, 45 minutes a month, an hour a month, or an hour a week. That's based on when the child is brought up for special education services and the team meet, they determine the needs of the child. So if the child needs his counseling, then the counselor is placed on the IEP. I think that's what you pretty much want to know, what the role of the counselor in special ed, correct?
Yeah, because the thing about it was the parent was saying that when she requested the child be placed in special ed, that she received no support. But it's not just you're just placing your child in special ed. They have to understand that it's a process that takes place before a child can even go into special ed. The teacher has
you have the sit process, school instructional team meeting. You have where the teacher might make a recommendation to have this child brought up to review his notes to determine if he qualifies for a sit meeting. I mean, it's a lot of. So you want to know the steps, Miss Dr. Anthony?
I know the steps. They need to know the steps so they can understand. You know what I'm saying?
So for example, Mr.
Feliciano.
Raymond, pardon me?
Oh, Mr. Feliciano.
Feliciano. So let's just say he has a student he wants to bring up for sit, the school instructional team. This student could be falling. This student could be missing out of class, just having problems in the classroom. So he's recommending the student for sit. Sit is when all the teachers sit down with the counselor and the administrator, and we determine the next step, school instructional team. The school instructional team then decides, okay, the next step might be triple ST, where if the strategies we put in place during the sit process don't work, then we go to the SST meeting. That means we're going to enhance the strategies, we're going to modify, we're going to change the strategies. Now, once we get to that second step, we go to the third step, which could be a possibility for the child is tested and he might qualify for special ed services, or if we can look at his record and determine if he needs an individual education plan. So I think that's what we're trying to.
Yes, because the way she was making it seem like, that she just requested the services and we just refused to give her what she wanted. But people have to understand, you can request the services, but your child may not qualify for those services. Because if your child is high functioning, as she said, your child may not qualify for special ed services. Your child has to meet the criteria in order to, receive those services. They may fall under 504, which is also under IDEA, but they may not qualify for full, special ed services. They may qualify for just that part. So that's where I think the breakdown was, that they didn't really understand how the, process worked when it came to, requesting, the services of special education and, trying to see if the child would qualify for special ed. Because like I told them, you just can't say my child is special ed. You just can't look at a person and say my child is special ed and they need those services. We have to go through processes, and we have to, like you said, we have to bring it to the team, and then they determine as a team if the child, qualifies for special ed. And another thing where, I wanted to bring this up is, Dr. Umar. So I had a guest on the show, which is my manager, Michael Nathan. So he was taking sound bites from Dr. Umar, and he was basically saying that we're targeting Black males and putting them in special ed. And like I told him, you know, we don't target children just to put them in special ed. 9 times out of 10, when the child comes to us, this has already been determined. This has already, the decision has already been made. All we're doing is following up and following that plan that was already put in place. And, you know, he was like, you know, because we're heavily medicating the children. I'm like, we have nothing to do with that. That's between the parents and, you know, the child's doctor, if they determine if the child is on medication. All we do is we will monitor the child inside of the classroom and make notations about how the child is responding in terms of the social setting, in terms of, you know, if he's blurting out, if he's, you know, acting up, what time of day is this taking place. So we're doing these anecdotal notes on that perspective, but not, you know, from the perspective of, you know, we are putting this child, you know, solely in special education.
Dr. Anthony, unfortunately, I have witnessed that, that a teacher, our white counterparts are not familiar, have their own biases. And I have seen that. I think also we have this conversation of special education. We need to talk about the abuse of special education and how it supplements people's incomes. And we need to be honest with that conversation. In my journey as an educator, we have tried to dismiss students, and a parent we have never seen came up and was like, no, you're going to put my child back on special education because they needed the money to supplement the income. So unfortunately, I have witnessed that where a team of us had to say, as you were saying, Dr. Clay, the team is very instrumental in the process of special education because everybody has to give their input. But I have seen the abuse, and that is definitely, I mean, it might be a topic for another day, but that abuse piece, especially in the urban setting, is very, I mean, that's a conversation you have to have. I have seen, you know, people sue for services, people sue for money, and it's one of those topics that, you know, kind of is a hush hush thing. And then I've honestly seen the straight abuse of not giving the parent the full scope of their child's disability. When I worked in another school district, the whole thing was, well, we can't tell these parents, you know, these children aren't capable of doing this stuff. True. However, we need to put a plan together that is going to sustain this student, because once they leave us, we need to be able to say that we've done everything to put them in the right position. I'm noticing that now in the district we're working in, where certain schools, the same thing's happening now. The children are a different color. And so I know Mr. Feliciano works with a certain population at our school. And I see, you know, when teachers can't handle a student, that's what happens to them. They get put in those, they get labeled and things, you know, go into places. And the student doesn't even understand why I have extra time for testing. Or one student says I have it because I want to get extra time on my driving test. And I said, what? So the special ed abuse is definitely a conversation that needs to be talked about as well with special education.
And the crazy part, and this is around the country. I was just speaking with this was last school year, matter of fact. We came up with this concept. Parents are ignorant to the basic fundamental concepts of the special education process. So schools take advantage of their ignorance. And a lot of times they don't provide the services because they know this particular parent is clueless about the process. So in defense of that individual you were speaking with, Dr. Anthony, she might have been one of those victims who was being taken advantage of, because, you know, if you work in the school system, you know what parents you better be on you better be on top with, and the ones that you be like, you know, whatever. So y'all know what I'm talking about. You got certain parents be like, oh yeah, we got to make sure we're on top of it. But another child, unfortunately, that's just the mindset, but that's real, even when we look at special ed. The parents don't know. I mean, you go to Northern Virginia, you have parents living in $500,000 homes who don't know the basic fundamental the process for how to get their child through the process. 4 years ago, I was working with a parent in Northern Virginia, and that school system was very fortunate that she was a client of mine, because they definitely took care of that child, but she didn't know. And she was, this parent made good money, but she just didn't know.
Right.
So we have a lot of parents who just don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So, and along with Fear was saying too, parents gonna take advantage of the system who do know how to get it, but a majority of them don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's kind of like the big piece. I think the big issue with special education is the ignorance that exists. There is ignorance because a lot of people think, okay, my child is not good at math, my child is not good at English, so I'm just gonna put him in special education. For you to be in special education or receive a 504, it's not just that you're bad at a class. There has to be a medical condition that needs to be diagnosed. Every decision that is taken needs to be justified by something that a doctor says needs to be provided. Because people confuse students that are a little behind in terms of their academics with students that are in special education when it has nothing to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't work that much with special education students, but I do work a lot with students that receive ESOL services. And I see that a lot. There's a lot of people that, oh, this child has a Hispanic last name, so therefore this student is going to receive ESOL services.
Right.
And it's not until we go and look at the file, we look at the transcripts, we look at the information, and we're like, hey, why is this child in the ESOL program? That should not happen. And the same way that happens in the ESOL program, I'm pretty sure that happens in the special education program. And I also think that the school districts are a little bit ignorant with the population that they serve. In my case, my school has a lot of international families. And the education system in the United States is very different from the education system of other countries. Some other countries don't have something called special education. So you come and talk to the parent and you say, oh, I'm going to put your child in special education. And the parent has no idea what you're talking about. So I think this, the schools and the district should be aware of that, because we need to educate the parents really on what our services are and what they are really for, not just saying, oh, we're just gonna put you in this program because you need remedial math or remedial English, which is what a lot of the time is happening. And that just brings that opens a whole can of worms with the self-esteem of the kids, because then the kids start feeling that they are less good than the other kids because of how everybody sees it. And it has nothing to do with it. Some of these smartest kids that I have seen are in the special education program, or they are not fluent in English, but just because they have a disability, just because they don't speak English and they are put in one of those two programs, they automatically receive this label of, oh, you're not good enough. And that is one of the things that as a teacher, I try to fight and I try to change, but it's very difficult to change because it is ingrained in the culture of how we do things. Not just in our particular schools and district, but nationwide, because in the other school districts that I have been, it still happens, whether it's in a stronger or a lesser degree, but it still happens.
Right.
That was a lot. So So yes, there is special education abuse. So we have to talk about that on a different day, because we can go on and on. So I want to touch upon some more topics before our time is up. So the next topic I want to talk about is the mass exodus of teachers, and how people are like, oh my God, the teachers are leaving. Like they didn't see it. Like the writing wasn't on the wall. The writing has always been on the wall that there was going to be a mass exodus of teachers, And I tell people all the time that, teachers are tired. People are tired, because I was just saying this the other day to one of my friends. If I could retire, I would retire. I have the years of service, but I just don't have the age. So I have to work a little while longer. But if I could go, I really would go, because, we get into education because of the love of children and the love of education. We don't get in education to be, tormented, people coming up to the school wanting to fight you. People want to, curse you out when you call their homes, when you're trying to have a conversation about their child. People are tired of it. And we just want to go to work, and we just want to do our jobs. We just want to teach. So I just want to know your thoughts and opinions on, the mass exodus of teachers, and how, administrators were put back in the classroom, and what that did for the school districts and, basically the schools across the nation.
Okay. Yeah, the writing was totally on the wall. I just think that, I know when the pandemic started, we were all heroes and thank you so much. And then the narrative changed, and wow. The abuse, the country can't go get back to work because you guys won't go back to school. And I was like, well, gee, that changed real quick. Plot twist. I guess also the way that money started to change hands. I guess, just seeing the fact that we used to have a colleague that we worked with, and the money that he was being offered to leave education became greater than his desire to be an educator. And he had to go. And that was the narrative for a lot of people. And then I don't think people understand. My mother is also an educator, and a long history of people who educated in my family. And my sister and I, we were talking, we were like, Mom, we're sorry. Because she used to come home and she'd be like, just give me 30 minutes. Just be quiet for 30 minutes. We'd be like, what? And then we'd give her the time. And then, she'd come out of her room, and then we'd talk her ear off. But there is such a thing as called teacher tired. Mm-hmm. And boy, that first week of school, having to, answer 10,000 questions, because literally by the time you get out the parking lot to the time you go back to the parking lot, you are on. There is never an off. There's never a break. There's a meeting. There's this. There's a student. There's a crisis. There's this. I don't want to take all the time. Oh, no, but then also the fact of the matter is how we weren't valued. And just the horror stories of, there was one in particular in a district where people just were dying. Teachers were dying. And it was like, oh, business as usual, and that was hard for me to swallow, because I always think that our job isn't a manufacturing plant. If I'm out for 10 days, my files don't go to Mr. Feliciano and he takes care of the files. Like, these are human beings. These are lives. And people were talking about, I have to protect my mental health. And I get it. If you are so, when I first start teaching, you get so energetic, you open and close the building, and I got to get these lessons together. And then once you see that, a veteran teacher pulls you to the side and is like, if you die tomorrow, they're going to put somebody in to replace you. And you're just like, no, they would never. They value me. And after that pandemic, it was like, kind of no. So definitely not a surprise to us in education that there was a mass exodus coming. And I don't even know how to keep them. I don't know what it is. And I noticed that a lot of male teachers, they're going fast, and it's just not enough to sustain a family.
Mm-hmm.
So I haven't been in the education business for a long time. But even from when I was in college, I went to school out of state. I grew up out of state. You could see that this was coming. What the pandemic did is just it removed the rug to show all of the worms that were there. Um, I was one of the teachers that thought about switching to another profession because when I decided to become a teacher, I wanted to teach. I love working with kids. I love teaching. I want for them to have better opportunities than the ones I did. And the reality is that you go to college and then they paint education like this amazing thing, like you're gonna be able to do all of these things, and then you get hired and then you realize you cannot do any of those things that you were told you could do in college because there's always a rock on the way, whether it's bureaucracy, whether it's lack of money. um so for me that was a big that was a big thing that I had to deal with in my first few years because I was very frustrated, like, is this really how it is? um and I don't think people realize that, you know we are the profession that makes other professions.
Right.
And somehow we are one of the worst paid.
Yeah.
And we are the profession that we go to work. We have to do hall duty sometimes during lunch. We spend our lunch trying to make copies, trying to get the classroom ready. We cannot go to the bathroom because we cannot leave the kids alone because things might happen. Um, then we leave if we have the chance to leave on time because there might be a department meeting, a faculty meeting, or whatever meeting. Um, and then you go home to grade, to plan for the next day. And it is just exhausting. And, when the pandemic started, for me, um, it wasn't that much the work aspect, it was the emotional impact of, you know, um, I went through something. I went through an ugly breakup. I got sick. Um, I really miss being in the building with the kids. I miss that connection. I miss the connection with people. And it really hit me. And it really made me think, like, is this really something that I want to do for the rest of my life? Because people don't care about what I do. I don't get paid enough to have to deal with all of these other things. And then every year they keep adding more responsibilities to the teacher. And, it comes to the point where I'm like, I thought that my job was to teach. And my job is not just to teach. I think that's the last, I think that's the
Yeah,
least
that's
amount
the
of
last.
time. Because we spend like with testing and we have to call all of these parents. A lot of these parents don't answer to our phone calls. Then we have our superior saying, well, you haven't done enough to contact parents. Then we have to deal with the students that they don't care. They're not paying attention, so it's very frustrating. And like a few weeks ago, about a month ago, I went to my supervisor's office and I was like, I can do this. I I was so frustrated because I was like, I feel like I keep giving my all the time, and the more I give, the least I accomplish. And that is a toll because this is a profession where we don't get to see our product until years later, and that can be very, very frustrating. It's not like when you're a doctor or a nurse and you're like, yes, my patient lived. It's not like other jobs where you just do it and that's it. um and here, like, you are working with people and you really want for them to do good, but you're not gonna know if they become professionals. You're not gonna know how well they are doing. um so that was my experience. But Dr. Clay said something about um enjoying those little wins, and
Yeah.
that was pretty much what my supervisor told me. right now I'm trying to enjoy the fact that my students like me.
Mhm.
So even if they're not doing well in class, the fact that they're showing up and they tell me that they like to come to my class, at least I think that is a first step. And then I'm gonna keep working and do what I can do, because I'm not Superman. I'm not a miracle worker. I cannot just do magic and fix everything. I wish I could, um, but it is what it is.
Right.
So,
Mhm.
And I'm gonna go back to Ms. Feliciano. That's one side. I want to thank. I was in the hallway in my building, and I'm responsible for 2 hallways, but I spend a lot of time on one particular hallway. But anyway, and I always go to these teachers, and I said, I don't know how y'all do this. I ain't gonna tell you what the other word was, because I'm like, so I'm always going the extra mile. Like, do you need the bathroom break? Because as the counselor, I have more flexibility, and I know what you're dealing with. Man, so I just want to say thank you for. I don't know how y'all do it every day, to be honest with you, but I'm gonna piggyback on something that happened to me last year, and they said men don't supposed to cry, but I was going through some of my personal life,
Mm-hmm.
and I woke up and I went to check my Facebook page. One of my former students posted something on Facebook,
Mm.
and and I just broke down and started crying because I'm going through something like, and for her to, and basically what she said, I remember when I was at this particular school and you were my counselor, and I remember you pulling me for 30 minutes. I'm just paraphrasing. She said 30 minutes just to have this conversation with me. And you really didn't know what was really going on with me. But I just want to let you know. I wish I can't. Long story. So she just basically was saying thank you for giving her that time when she was in elementary school.
Mm.
And that I didn't realize the impact it was having on her.
Mm.
And this girl is 24 with 3 kids.
Mm.
So she's going back almost 16 years.
Mm.
To whatever. I can't do the math because I'm not a math teacher. But anyway, I'm just saying it's those. And I don't even know what I said to this girl in elementary school. But she remembered that it's the seeds that we plant. Because if you could just see how she wrote it, she said, if I don't say anything else, I want to thank you before my last day is on this earth. Thank you for being there for me. Man, I started crying like, anyway, I was crying.
Bald-headed baby.
Yeah, like, because I'm saying that was almost, she's 24 and she was in elementary school.
Mm.
And she said, I remember those 30 minutes when you specifically pulled me. And she said, I never really told you what was going on, but it was the words that gave me the hope to continue. So I want to thank Mr. Feliciano and Ms. Beard and Dr. Anthony for what you guys do in the classroom. Because we're all planting seeds, but y'all really planting seeds because y'all educating the next generation. And sometimes y'all don't get acknowledged for what y'all do. And we all human. We all want to give up. But just remember, we're planting seeds.
Yes.
So one day somebody gonna send you a message, Miss Beard, Mr. Phillips.
No, they do. They take me down to my brake pads. They do.
Right. So
like, all right, I'll go back to work.
Recharge. That's that recharge coming in.
Yeah, you definitely need it. In parking lots and restaurants.
Right. Because you just never know. You never know, Mr. Feliciano, how your kids look at you. You being from Latin America and they from Latin America, they see hope and they see help. And that's what you got. You're a role model to those students, man.
It has happened to me that I have gone to a restaurant and one of my former students was a waiter, and then I asked for the bill and there's no bill, and I'm like, what happened to the bill? And then my student comes out and he's like, no, mister, I'm not, you are not gonna pay because you were nice to me. And it's the fact that they're like, a lot of these kids, they just need someone who's nice to them and who just wants to listen. And like, I know that I don't get paid for students to think that I'm nice. but like the fact that some students that I have never had in my classroom that, you know, they know my name. They know that where to find me if they have any issues. Sometimes they just go there and they talk to me about boyfriend drama, girlfriend drama, and I'm like, oh my God, what did I do?
You just gotta listen.
But you know,
gotta listen. You just like.
But you know that's what I say. I should try to enjoy those little wins, because if they trust me for those things, then that must mean that I'm doing something right, or that's what I think.
No, you are.
And I hope that in the future, you know, like, because this is only year 6 for me, so I just hope that in the future I get to see many more students, you know, like doing these amazing things, and for me to feel like it's actually gratifying, you know, all of the effort and all of the things and all of the hustle that we have to go through, just to get them through that stage at graduation.
But if you walk in with the mindset that I'm here to help and provide hope, that's what that's what your kids will see. So regardless of what the dynamics is going on in our building, with the verbal, with the students, with the staff, we have to have the right mindset.
Right.
Because I know it get crazy as a counselor. So I know what y'all dealing with. But it's your mindset. It's that seed that we're all planting, and then somebody will come along and water that seed. Mm-hmm. And that's going to be the life-changing thing that's going to take place.
And you're absolutely correct. And, you know, I want people out there in, you know, TV land and, you know, in the different countries to understand teachers don't leave education because of students.
Ever.
Please understand that. Teachers do not leave because of students. Teachers leave because of the other bureaucracy that, you know, we're faced with, and the other challenges that we have to deal with in the run of a day. And people who are not in education, like Dr. Clay says, he takes his hats off to us. They don't understand what we deal with on a day-to-day basis. The craziness that we have to deal with, you know, not, and like Ms. Feliciano said, not being able to go to the restroom, not being able to eat your lunch. Like I was telling my boyfriend today, I had no lunch because I was doing stuff. I'm always working throughout my lunch. I'm always, you know, helping a kid. I'm always, you know, doing something for the class of 2023. So we don't get those breaks. We don't have those moments. So sometimes we do have to, you know, like go out to the car and sit just to, you know, like woosah and, you know, gather ourselves and gather our thoughts and, you know, try to put things back together in our heads, you know, get to that mindset, like you said, Dr. Lay, get back to that mindset, because it is challenging and it is a lot on an individual teacher, not only having to do your job, but also having to cover classes, also having to monitor the hallways, also having to do all this other stuff that people just don't understand that we go through. And when we get all that done, then it's, you know, time to go home. But when we go home, we still don't go home to a quiet home and, you know, not working. We're writing letters of recommendation, we're grading, we're planning, we're trying to get prepared for the next day. And this is all the stuff that the people don't see, that we don't get paid for, are those off time hours. And so for me, I just don't understand why people are against giving teachers raises. I just don't get it. I honestly don't get it. Just don't understand it. I was at a comedy show this past weekend, right? And so one of the jokes that was told at the comedy show, so they was like, you know, I normally do this, you know, I know I don't have any teachers in the house. I was like, yes, you do. Then another lady raised her hand. She was like, I'm an educator as well. So she was like, what time does your school end? She said, what time does your school start? I said 9:30. What time does it end? I was like 4:30. Well, between those 2 hours, my child is yours. You deal with it. So, you know, that's the mindset that the parents are taking. You know, we call you to talk about your child. Don't call that was basically words. Don't call me to talk about my child during the hours of 9:30 to 4:30. That's your child. You deal with them. And so, you know, this is the stance that a lot of parents has taken. And, you know, when we call and when we send, you know, messages, we getting cursed out right and left, and don't call my house. Don't do this. Don't do that. But this is your child. You know what I'm saying? So it's just simply amazing how, you know, people have the audacity to, you know, say that teachers don't need raises and that we make enough money. But, you know, all we want is a living wage. All we want to do is just, you know, be able to survive, because they don't understand. When you don't send your child to school with supplies, guess who supply those supplies? We do. When your child doesn't come with a notebook, guess who supply those supplies? We do. When your child is improperly dressed and don't come to school in clothes, guess who give that child clothes? We do. So we don't get the thanks that we're deserved, and we don't get the recognition that we're deserved. Because at one point we was considered first responders. You know, oh, y'all did this, y'all did that. But then when you had to spend the day with your child and you actually see how your child acts in school, oh, it was a problem for you to see and, you know, understand what the teachers are going through. Oh, the teacher's not teaching. The teacher's not doing this. They need to go back to school. No, because you didn't want to deal with your child. And now you see what we're talking about from an educator standpoint of, you know, your child not paying attention, your child off, your child doodling, your child looking at different websites, your child doing this. You got a firsthand take of it while your child was at home during the pandemic. And then you have the audacity to say teachers don't need a raise. Okay. That was a lot.
You got it out. You got it out.
I got it out. Got it out. But it's just,
Right.
you know, it just really baffles me how, you know, people try to basically lowball educators and, you know, the things that we do and, you know, the work that we put in. They act like, you know, we go to work just to sit at a desk all day. Where they do that at? Please make it make sense. You know what I'm saying? We go to work, we work with your child, we work with other people's children, we work with other people's children. Because I mean, you know, this is my second year at the school that I'm at or whatever. And I mean, it's a lot of kids who know me that I don't know them. You know what I'm saying? And my kids don't skip. I'm like, I have 30 plus kids every day. I'm like, well, why y'all don't skip my class? I'm just
You
joking.
need to stay home. It's okay.
I'm just joking, but they don't skip, but they like the class. Although some of them do not do the work, they still, like Mr. Feliciano say, they show up, but they like the class.
I think that's the most beautiful conundrum I have ever heard, because they go to class and they tell you, I love this class, but then they don't do the work. So
my favorite is they skip periods in your class and didn't do your work if they're in your class. You gotta love it. You gotta love it. You got it.
So I want to thank all of you for coming on. I want to have a part 2 and a part 3 so we can discuss some more, you know, educational topics to give those parents some insight to actually, you know, watch the show and follow me and, you know, keep up with what's going on. So I'll let you guys know. We'll probably do another one probably like in January. Is that good for you guys? January? Okay, so yeah, like in January. And then I want to bring on some, we were supposed to have a person from charter schools. So he wasn't able to make it. So I want to bring him on so we can get the educational standpoint from a charter perspective, as well as, you know, from, you know, our perspective that are in public, you know, public education, and see if we can compare, you know, charter to public and try to merge it and make it fit and make it work. Dr. Clay, I want to thank you as always. Congratulations on your award. And I hope you get the recognition that you deserve. Mr. Feliciano, thank you for bringing that ESOL perspective. Ms. Beard, thank you for bringing that ELA perspective. And, you know, I'm kind of certified K-12, so I'm just all over the place. I need some Adderall. I'm just everywhere.
Oh, no. We need to talk about drug use. How about that?
Okay. I need some Adderall. I need to focus. No, I'm just joking.
Yeah.
But I want to thank you guys again for, you know, joining the All Around, and make sure you click like and share, and make sure you join us on next Monday. We will have some different topics. We'll talk about the whole Kyrie Irving and what's his name? Yee, and, you know, the whole anti-Semitic, you know, craziness, and yeah, get down to the get down. So once again, I want to thank you guys so much for coming on, and, you know, make sure you click like and share, and make sure you guys share with your family so that they can watch the episodes, and I will be in touch.
Peace.
Thank you.
Holla.
Attacks against Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders are on the rise.
My simple solution to the problem was remove people from the scene and help them feel safer. In terms of the hate crimes, I think there is so much more work to be done. We really need to come together and tackle this issue as a community.